First of all, I want to say how honored and excited we are all here to have you for this conversation this evening. And I would like to start with introducing you. And I don't know if the people would believe, because it sounds that the things that you have achieved and have done over, your life so far, and I'm sure much is further lying ahead. Sounds like a few different, five people at least. But I'll try to touch the main points. Okay, so Rabbi Melchior, or Malchior, what a beautiful Hebrew name, Michael Malchior, which literally translates to who is like God, my King of Light. Translation of the Bible is something that we deal with here. We've talked with Professor Greenstein and Professor Fox about their translations. And your father also translated the Torah into Danish. So, we feel like close already. So Rabbi Melchior is an Orthodox rabbi, thinker, a doer, an activist, a former minister of social and diaspora affairs, deputy minister of foreign affairs, was a Knesset member for almost 10 years, roughly 10 years, and has done so much in the realm of bridge building. I'll just mention few. I cannot go through all of it because, again, it will take the whole hour. The Mosaica Center for Interreligious Cooperation, Middle East Religious Peace Initiative, and we'll talk about that. The Yachad Council, dialogue within Israel, religious and secular Jews, the Citizens Accord Forum between Jews and Arabs in Israel. And, kind of to frame it, I talked about work that is intrafaith, interfaith, and extrafaith. I'm not sure that extrafaith is the right definition, but in a sense, a Citizens Accord is to an extent that he is also the Chief Rabbi of Norway for life. He comes from a family that has more than 300 years of history in the Nordic countries. He's got two rabbi sons, in one of them in Copenhagen and the other is in Oslo, I think, right? And they're continuing, and he is also kind of keeping that. He's also a community rabbi in Jerusalem, in Talpiot, was ordained 40 years ago, and he is continuing his rabbinical work. You, as a Knesset member, pushed for the budgeting of the National Library, which we had just 2 weeks ago. We had a representative of the National Library coming here and talking with us about the National Library of Israel and its outreach program for Jewish communities and Judaism generally speaking. Also Meitarim, which is a school brand, kind of a combination of different schools who teach Judaism for religious and non-religious kids. Interesting. You have interacted with faith leaders all over the world and in Israel with the late Sheikh Abdallah Nimr Darwish, who was the founder of the Islamist movement. I just want to explain that you are not just going for the people in the middle. You are like going to the hardcore religious leaders of the Islam in Israel in order to make these ties. And also dealt with international frictions such as Kashmir, got international leaders into all kinds of peace conventions, including Elie Wiesel, Nelson Mandela, Václav Havel, and I'm getting to the end. I know it's long and it's incredible that I'm talking about one person, but it is. The Alexandria Convention with the Archbishop of Canterbury. We have some English people here, so they know that is almost the head of the Anglican Church. That's the Queen, but they've got the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Grand Mufti of Egypt and El Azhar. and have done much more, but that's, the little bit that I felt compelled, because it is all related to our discussion today about dialogue. And we will talk about the Religious Peace Initiative, but I want to start with, first of all, asking you if there is anything else you want to tell us about yourself that we have neglected.
Well, talking about myself is, of course, one of my favorite subjects. So I could do that the whole hour, but that's not what it's supposed to be about.
Right. Okay.
But if you want something from my history, you mentioned at a certain stage that my history starts off in Scandinavia. To be more exact, it's actually in Denmark, where my family has lived for 350 years and has been rabbis there for 7 generations. I'll just mention 2 points maybe from that history, which doesn't have anything to do with me. So therefore, I think that I can share it with you and with the listeners. One has to do with something back in the history for a couple of 100 years ago, with probably the only writer in Denmark who's very well known to the whole audience, Hans Christian Andersen. Hans Christian Andersen is well known because he wrote the fairy tales, and he was actually a very poor writer, and he came from a small province town in Denmark called Odense. He came to Copenhagen, to the capital, as a young student and had no money, no place to be, and my family adopted him. And this is an important part of his biography, but also of my family's biography. And this is one of the reasons that I believe in fairy tales. So that's one thing I wanted to share with you. The other thing, which is closer maybe to modern history, was part of the story during the Second World War. As you might know, maybe, I don't know if all the listeners know that, but Denmark was very different from many of the other countries under German occupation during the dark years from 1939 to 1945, because in Denmark, nearly all the Jews were saved. Right. And they were not just saved by bravery of some individuals, but they were saved by bravery of practically a whole nation. And there were hundreds of thousands of people who were involved in saving of the Jews. My grandfather, who was a rabbi in Copenhagen at the time, he had been functioning, the position in Denmark was taken, and he had been a rabbi in Germany, functioning in Germany. And when the Nazis came to power, his community said, "You have a Danish passport. We can't afford to hold you. You can leave." He went back to Denmark. The position as chief rabbi was taken. So he spent those years from 1933 to 1940, to the occupation of the Germans, speaking to non-Jewish crowds every day, speaking about tolerance, speaking about dialogue, speaking about what Nazism is, speaking also about Judaism and Jewish thoughts and Jewish ethics. And that was part of what gave the Danish people I would say, the immune system which worked when the real test came and the Germans came to arrest the Jews. He could ask the Jews to go in hiding with the non-Jewish friends, including with the Christians and with the priests and others, and And they would not only receive the Jews, they would take them into hiding, risking their own lives, and help them until they could be saved and brought into refuge with the neighboring Sweden, which was a neutral country. So they were brought over the narrow straits of sea between Denmark and Sweden in small fisher boats, and that is part of, say, my heritage. That I believe that, first of all, that people can change, that things can change, and that through dialogue and through active work for peace, that we can turn things around, and that stories which could not happen other places and which did not happen other places in Europe, actually it could take place. But this is also part of, let's say, not my personal biography, because I was born 9 years after the end of the Second World War, but it's part of my heritage.
Definitely, and this exceptional Danish behavior during the Second World War led to a very famous square being named after Denmark in Jerusalem, and in Haifa, in a very famous school in Jerusalem is also named after it. It's very, very unique experience. And I want to take that segue from that story of your family heritage in Northern Europe and in Denmark and Norway to ask two questions that are related to along the line of what you've said. One is how the dialogue, being that you have that unique perspective of a rabbi in Europe, which is not one of the two main Jewish centers today. Today, most, let's say, roughly 90% of the Jewish people are concentrated either in Israel or in the United States of America. And what can your experience in a country that such as Norway, with questions such as circumcision and questions such as kosher butchery, can teach us in regards to a dialogue between also Jews and Muslims, because they experience the same challenges with the European society that nowadays has hard time accepting some of these concepts. That's one thing, and the other one I'll ask afterwards. So I'd like to hear a bit about that.
Okay. Well, it's a little special question, but I'll answer it in any case since you asked it. The truth is that there were countries which didn't permit the kosher slaughtering method, and Norway was one of the first countries which didn't permit it. The Norwegian Parliament, already from the 1st of January 1933, did not permit the kosher slaughtering method, and it was before the Nazis introduced the same measure in Germany, and it was, apparently they said that it was out of concern for the animals, but we know from all research that the kosher slaughtering method, which also is the same as what the Muslim use, is a very humane way of slaughtering, and we have a lot of scientific research, also scientific research from this past year, which shows that. So it is a very complicated. Already was in 1933 in Norway, very complicated combination between hatred against the other and under coverage of having concern for animal rights. And I can just give you an example. It was recently the kosher slaughtering was forbidden in Denmark, and the Danish minister who was responsible for this area, he said that he would put down a commission to investigate scientifically if there was a scientific basis for this prohibition. And they put down a commission, and they came up with a report. And this report said, just as I quoted now, that there was no scientific basis for saying that the Jewish and the Muslim slaughtering method was any more cruel than any other slaughtering method, and on the opposite. And then the leaders of the Jewish community met with him and asked him then to annul the prohibition. And he said, you know, if it was only you Jews it was talking about, then I would have no problem annulling it. I cannot be seen to accommodate the Muslim community today with the anti-Muslim sentiments which are in Denmark today. So therefore, I cannot change that prohibition. And this is a catastrophic expression of Islamophobia, which is totally unacceptable, of course. And I think that people of conscience should all work together, whether they're Christian, Jews, or Muslims, or whatever they are, or people just of conscience, of humanity, should work together so that religion is not used. One of the problems today in Northern Europe, as it is also other places in the world, I've seen also in America, different places, is that some of these places are a post-religious, post-ritual society. And therefore, rituals, especially religious rituals, is very strange to these societies. And therefore, when these issues are discussed in the public, it looks like something which is like from the very dark ancient ages, and people have, I mean, first of all, just slaughtering animals. I mean, people might like to have a piece of chicken or a piece of meat on their plate, but they for sure do not want to hear about that the animals are actually slaughtered in order for to reach that. And anybody, and when this comes close to you, this is something which disgusts people. They live today in an urban place, and therefore this is something which usually disgusts people. I mean, I know here in Israel we have the highest number in the world of vegetarians and vegans here in Israel, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a blessed thing. But again, I believe that it's difficult to argue. These are issues which are difficult to argue in the public sphere because more and more people are in the post-religious, post-ritual world, especially when we're talking about Western Europe or several places also in the United States.
Right. What can Israel learn from this communities in the diaspora to implement into the relationship within different religions within Israel? Because oftentimes religious is cited as one of the major factors in the continuation and maybe even the leading element in the conflict between Jews and Arabs in the past 100 or more years in Israel. And people talk about it, listen, it's not just a territorial conflict, but it's also a religious conflict. How can your approach to the to the peace is very unique in the sense that you say that religious is part of the solution, or should be the part of the solution rather than the problem. So how can we learn both from the experience of Jews elsewhere, but also here, to make religion part of the peace process?
Well, the major mistake in the peace process, which was done from the outset, was that it was much too narrow a process. Now, I know the peace process like the palm of my hand. I've been involved in every aspect. Some of it I've been involved very personally in, from before I was in politics, when I was in politics, and after I was in politics. I know every detail of the peace process. And I can tell you that even when the peacemakers or the politicians were sincere, which they've not always been, but even when they were
surprisingly enough, right?
yeah, but even when they were sincere, it was often that peace was seen as a process. If we take, for example, the Oslo Accords, it was seen as a process between the secular left of the Israeli society and the secular left of the Palestinian society. And the hope was that out of that would come a peace which was supported by the whole world, applauded by the whole world at the time. And even the people-to-people measures were the same people. It was preaching to the choir. It was NGOs from the
It's
secular...
preaching. Interestingly, preaching to the choir is a very religious phrase, but it's kind of the other way around. It was preaching
Right.
to the non-religious choir, so to speak.
Right, but it was NGOs on the very left of the Israeli spectrum speaking to NGOs on the very left of the Palestinian spectrum. The problem was that this was much too narrow a tent to create something beautiful. Peace is something beautiful. Peace is the most central. Without peace, we don't have a future here. We don't have a future. The Palestinians don't have a future. I believe with all my heart, and this is my personal belief, it doesn't commit to anybody else than myself. But I believe with all my heart that we've come back to Zion as part of the fulfillment of a prophetic vision. And I believe that it's not a coincidence. I believe that there is a divine finger involved, if you can say that figuratively, in our coming back to Zion. But I also then have to believe that it's not a divine mistake, that there is another people also living here. And we have all kinds of sources for it, which is far too long for me to now to explore. But there are Talmudic, Midrashic sources which say exactly that there is another people which has come into the vacuum, which has been here. They've been Jews always living here in the Holy Land and in Israel, but there is another people living here. And between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, there are two peoples living who are more or less the same size, and we have to work it out with each other. I believe that is what God expects of us, and that is what humanity expects of us. And therefore, if we have to work it out together, why not be in the front? Why be those who sit in the back of the train? Why not have the hands on the wheel and do this the right way, not out of interests, not because we have no choice, but because this is a fulfillment, shalom, salam, peace. That is the fulfillment of every dream, every single prayer. We don't have one prayer where we don't end the prayer with praying for God. We're praying to God for that He should help us making peace. Even when we end, when we end the prayer, we go 3 steps back when we end the prayer. Now, the going back 3 steps, there are 2 explanations. One explanation, which most people know, is we go back, we've spoken to God, like we've poured out our hearts to God, and we've spoken to God like when you go back, when you've spoken to a king, then you go back, so you go back like not turning your back to the king. You go back 3 steps when you're leaving the king. That's one way of explaining it. Another way of explaining it, which is in our sources, says that we go back 3 steps because we want to show that when we ask God for making peace, we have to go back. We have to show modesty and go back and leave room for the other, because you can't make peace without leaving room for the other. This is part of the modesty we show. So I started already many years ago, together with Muslim and Christian colleagues. I started the religious peace track. It wasn't just a question of dialogue. We've proven over these years that we've solved many, many conflicts. We do it mostly under the radar, but we built a real trust on both sides with the most radical rabbis and with the most radical imams. The Christians are not really so involved in this because they're not the problem here. The problems are the radicals on both sides, not the moderate rabbis or the moderate imams, but the radicals. And we've been able to virtually, I can prove it, it's been also published, we've saved thousands and thousands of human lives over the last couple of years through our mediation, because we don't work like the politicians work out of interests. We work out of ideals and values, and it's a very, very big difference. So even just, these last 2 weeks, if I can show you what I have on my table of issues where both sides come with things which just can't be solved, but through the religious leadership on both sides and the trust, even with groups like the Hamas and the Jihad and other groups which seemingly do not want to have anything to do with anybody from the other side, with us they're willing to engage. And the same with the settler rabbis and many of the others who want to repair the world. We call it letaken olam b'malchut Shaddai, to repair the world in God's kingdom, and this is, and to repair it means hands-on, going into the very difficult issues and solving them in order to help people and saving people's lives and bringing joy to their lives. Mm-hmm. So this is what the religious peace process is about, and we have centers now all over Israel and in the Palestinian territories, but also all over the Arab world. We have connections, deep connections in Morocco, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Saudi Arabia.
How about the United Arab Emirates? They are now the favorite destination.
We also have connections there, but we're not really in war. We've never been in war with them. So the whole story about making peace with them is not such. We welcome all peace which is made, but we've never really been in war with them. So it's not
right. It's a different kind of peace. It's more of a it didn't change anything on the ground. Maybe the fact that people could, after COVID-19, fly there to see the Burj Khalifa without a foreign passport. But other than that, we obviously never had war with them.
Yeah. But we have good contacts there with religious leaders there, and
right.
Yes.
I want to ask, Rabbi, do you think that the religious dialogue between Jewish rabbis and Muslim imams is more convenient to those respective sides because they don't have to recognize a national sovereignty? Is there something to that? A little bit along the lines of the Turkish Ottoman Empire preferring to view the different ethnic groups and religious groups as religious groups and not as national groups?
Well, I personally do believe that we have to also deal with national issues and issues. We have to be hand-on with everything.
Sure,
And
but wouldn't they deem it more acceptable to deal with a rabbi who is representing a faith, a religion, rather than uh, a, a political leader? I'm not saying you were both. You are both when you were in politics, sure. But I'm asking myself, as someone who is interested in a prospect of peace, could that solution, which amazingly is saving lives and solving local conflicts, could that work in the level of statehood, both on the Jewish Israeli side and the Arab Palestinian side, which is again not entirely Muslim, as Israel is not entirely Jewish, but mainly Muslim?
well, there are many things which I've seen that you can solve if you do it the religious way. I'll give you one example. When we talked about creating a Palestinian state, for example, 2 states for 2 peoples. So I'll give you one example. I had a colleague, a rabbi, who he went a lot to the public about the issue about religious peace. He unfortunately passed away some years ago, of Menachem Fruman, who was very famous in this
Very
area.
famous, very unique personality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I worked a lot with him for many, many years. And from the outset, he liked to work a lot also in the media. I like to do it more quietly. And he went to and when we talked about the issue of having 2 states for 2 people, so he went to Arafat. And and talked about the issue. He lived in a settlement in the West Bank called Tkoa, where also his wife and many of his children live today, his widow. And so he talked with Arafat, who knew that he lived in the settlements. Arafat wanted all the settlements out. Said they were a breach of international law, and he wanted all the settlements out. Then he said to Arafat, but if we look at the settlements, for example, as Jewish holy places, they have synagogues, they have study houses, we look at them as Jewish holy places. And Arafat said, if they're holy places, and of course they should be allowed to stay there, we would never take away a holy place. So he said, but can we look at all the settlements as holy places? Arafat said, of course, we can look at all the settlements as holy places. Then it's no problem that they stay. All of them, said Rav Fruman, said, yes, of course, it's no problem that they stay. It's a question of what approach you come with. If you come with a religious approach, you can solve issues. I can give you many, many examples like that. You can solve the issues which are not solvable if you come with the tools of politicians. When you come with the tools of true believers, then it's a total different issue.
Mm-hmm. And that is very interesting indeed. But again, it is still, to an extent, keeping the dialogue on the religious level, which could work for people who speak the religious language. But could it work for non-religious people?
First of all, the vast majority of the 2 peoples living here look towards religion as their main source of identity.
Right,
And
they're traditional in a sense.
traditional. The vast majority of people look towards religion, even if they're not religiously practicing and so on. They look towards religion. We don't want to exclude those who are secular. I want to exclude them from the tent of peace. But we just want to expand the tent of peace, include everybody. If you want to make real peace, you can't make it by uprooting religion. That's why the religious were so much against the peace. They saw the peace as a way of secularizing society. And that's why they were so strongly against it. They say one thing is the issue of land. That's one thing. But you want to uproot our identity. You want to uproot everything we believe in. You want to uproot our whole connection with our past and to have a cheap secularization of the traditional societies on both sides. This we can't, if that is the choice which is put in front of us, then we will always choose our identity and not to choose a very not stable peace in any case. So this can never succeed. So it's not that we want to chase away those who don't feel connected to religion, but the vast majority of the people here, even people like Ben Gurion and those who established the states of Israel, Ben Gurion said the Tanakh, the Bible, is the Kushan. It's a Turkish expression. He said the Bible is the deed of the Jewish people when it comes back to the land. Even though he was not traditional or religious Jew in any way or sense, but still it's the Bible. Ben Gurion would call into a press conference when he found a new interpretation for an expression in the Bible. Right? And the journalists then would come to the press conference. It was, you can't disconnect. If you disconnect us from our source, and that's true also for the Christians here and for the Muslims here. If you disconnect us from our source, then there is nothing here. And that's what happened with the peacemakers, and therefore it was doomed to fail. And that is what we're turning around now with the religious peace track. And that's why this will succeed.
So how do you see the religious peace contributing to the future of the dialogue and the future of the peace process between Israel and the Palestinian Authority? Do you think the two-state solutions is still applicable in the current situation, because much has changed since the Oslo Accord that you've mentioned earlier? The reality on the ground changed. The reality on both sides, Gaza now being with a different authority, not part of the PLO, but rather Hamas-led. Maybe it's better for religious peace, I don't know. And the PLO being not elected at all in the past, I think 12 years, maybe more. So how do you think that the religious peace, how can it contribute to the continuation and the future of the peace process between Israel and the Palestinian Authority?
I think that I see that somebody is writing here one state.
There are different opinions, even though not everybody here is Jewish, they all have many opinions like we have.
Also, if everybody had been Jewish, there would be many opinions. That's fine.
Right, that's what I said. Even though not everybody is Jewish, everybody's got many opinions. Right.
That's fine. I'll tell you from my perspective. I mean, even in our religious peace coalition, we have a very broad coalition of thousands of members, but we have also different opinions. We have some basis which we all agreed upon. They're the rights of the two peoples, the non-violence, we solve everything non-violence, and many other principles which also the radicals have agreed to. But we have we have disagreements upon the solution. Also on the issue of one state, two states. I want to say my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that there is no such thing as a one-state solution. There is no such thing. If it's a one-state solution, then we cease to be a Jewish state. That the moment we say that, then there is no more a Jewish state. Because then half the population here is not Jewish, and then we cease. Either that means that we, not a question of the land so much, and we sit on a people who doesn't get the same rights as we do. The first principle in Judaism is don't do to the other what you hate that the other should do to you. Right? We determine, when Israel was created, Ben Gurion wrote to the United Nations that we demand for the Jewish people, after 2,000 years, we demand our right to self-determination as the Jewish people. But at the same time, he wrote in the same letter to the United Nations, he wrote that the Arabs living here should have the same rights. And this has been always the basis for the two states, for the two peoples, has always been the basis. Now, I don't think the two-state solution is a very good solution. It's going to be difficult to implement it. There's only one thing which is impossible to implement, and that's a one-state solution. That's why I believe in the two-state solution, because the difficult is much better than the impossible. Have a one-state solution means that we forever sit in a situation where only either where we cease to be a Jewish state, or where only Jews have rights, and the non-Jews don't have rights in this state. And I don't want to live in such a country. I don't think that it's right. I think it's against every Jewish principle. I can quote you lots of principles from the Torah, from our sources, that's not a right. I don't want to live in such a country. And that's why I personally believe in such a solution. Now, what is our role in the religious peace? Our role is to lead the way that people again come to believe that peace is possible, to talk about it, to show people that there is a way that we can solve conflicts like we've been doing with the radical secular rabbis and with Christian leaders and Muslim leaders, Islamic leaders during the past years. We will probably go much more public with this in the next year or two or three, much more public. And by doing that, by going public, then we will give back people the hope that a solution is possible. Eventually, the politicians will have to work out the details of a solution. I think I know what the details should be, but the politicians, we can lead the way. We can take away the obstacles. We can restore the confidence and the optimism and the belief in the hearts of the people. That is what is the role of religion, to restore belief that it's possible. And when people see that the Arab leaders, that the Muslim leaders from all over the Middle East, who were against our existence, who wanted to wipe us off the map, when the biggest terrorists who I'm sitting with, who have been for years and years in prison, like Sheikh Abdallah Nimadowish, who created the Islamic Jihad, who created the Islamic movement and was the head of the Islamic movement till the last day of his life. But he believed and he fought for the rights of the Jews to our own state. And he fought against anti-Semitism. And he spoke out in every Arab television station and radio station and in every mosque against that. When we see that people turn around that way, and we see more and more people like that, and when this is reported, when we see Muslim leaders going to Auschwitz, my great friend Sheikh Muhammad al-Isa, who went now, and the head of 100 people, 100 Muslim leaders to Auschwitz at the 100th at the 75th commemoration day for the liberation of Auschwitz. He's the general secretary of the Muslim World League from Saudi Arabia, going to Auschwitz, saying that any Muslim who doesn't understand and doesn't take in on himself what it means, the Shoah, the Holocaust, for every believing Muslim. It didn't happen 10 years ago. It didn't happen 20 years ago. This is a revolution which has happened because of the religious peace. And it's happening these days. It's the biggest revolution which is happening. But we also have to respect the other. Just as they are more and more respecting us, we have to respect them. And it cannot be done by us living in a state where they have no rights. If they have full rights, then this ceases to be, I saw now a question about that, then this ceases to be a Jewish state. If there is 50% Muslims in the state of Israel, then this ceases to be a Jewish state.
Right. What about the 20% Muslims or so that already live here? You are leading the Citizens Accord Forum, which is trying to, this is why I said intrafaith, interfaith, and a bit extra faith, in the sense of trying to work a citizens accord in order to make life for non-Jews and Jews alike more civic-based here in Israel. Can you elaborate a little bit about that initiative as well?
Well, that initiative is coming as part of the problem of democracy today. Democracy is in a crisis all over the world, not just here in Israel, but all over the world. For sure in America and in many European countries, all over the world. And what we're trying to do in the Citizens Accord Forum, not only between Arabs and Jews, but also with the different groups, with the Ethiopian Jews, with immigrants from former Soviet Union,
right? We have
ultra-Orthodox.
Right, we had Rabbi Dr. Sharon Shalom speaking with us about the Ethiopian.
Okay, but what we're doing there is to find models. You see, what is happening is that more and more people feel outside democratic process. When they feel outside, they're dangerous. They feel that they're not listened to. But what we're doing is all over the country, we're creating groups who are working together with policymakers, local policymakers, municipal leaders, with people from the Knesset, from the parliament, with governments, with government agencies. I'm also running something inside Mosaica, which is called Reconciliation, which is mediation. We have the National Mediation Center, we have 44 mediation centers all over the country, which is leading mediation. It can be family mediation, but it can be between ethnic groups, and it can be family, it can be planning in the town, so that people feel that they're involved, that they're listened to, that there's not somebody like the problem you have also in Washington or in America, that you feel that somebody far away is governing over your head, or it can be in like Brexit, where you felt that somebody in Brussels is deciding you don't have anything to say in this, or the Wall Street is deciding, and then populism easily can pop up, because it can be used by involving all the different groups in decision making, and by listening to them, and also they're part of the decision making. So many of these groups have been part of legislation in many different fields, not just question of rights. It's question of what happens when, I don't know, what happens when you want to take out a child from his home because of problems at home. Is the community listened to? Can you solve it maybe without taking away the child? Or what happens with the elderly in society? How can you how can you involve also groups, not only individual rights, but groups in solving issues? How do you listen to the cultural differences? At of course, with limits, there are red lines. Of course, if there's abuse involved, but again, how do we involve leaders and people on the ground of all different kinds? So this is what we're trying to do with very interesting results. And the models which we're creating here in Israel are actually copied other places in the world, and we're also learning from other places in the world here. So there is an interaction because the problems are not unique for us.
Sadna de'ar khadhu. The anvil of the earth is one. You know, problems
right,
elsewhere are similar to problems here.
right, but by learning from each other, we can, and from each other's failures. We've been working a long time in the Citizen Court Forum, and for example, there's a big group of ultra-Orthodox and Arabs and Israeli Arabs and secular who are brought to a big institution in Ohio, in the US. They bring over 25, 30 people and listen to how we discuss a round table to learn from us, one of the biggest institutions in academic institutions in the US dealing with multiculturalism, and they're learning from our experiences. So it's quite interesting. The same is happening with groups who are going to Germany, and we, as the same way, we have teachers who come from Africa who teach us in international seminars which we have, and a lot is being done in this field, just as what we're doing in the religious peace is today being copied in many countries in the Middle East and in Europe, which is for me very, very inspiring. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, that the Torah comes out of Zion and God's world from Jerusalem. So I feel very honored when people in Arab capitals call me for building models for how they can do something to better societies with total different compositions than what we have here.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to open it a little bit for a few questions from the listeners, from the guys here. So guys, if you have a question, you are more than welcome to raise your hand and I will call upon you. I see, Simon, you already have a question. So do you want to ask it, please? You have to unmute the microphone.
Yes, I'm just a bit slow. Thank you. That was an absolutely fascinating and inspiring presentation. I find the more I read the Israeli press, the more I study Israel, the more confused I become. It doesn't get any clearer trying to grapple with the detail. So that's why I prefer to ask questions rather than make statements, because I realize my ground is very, very shaky. And I suppose I've recognized my own ignorance. But one of the questions which intrigues me is whether Arab Israelis and Jewish Israelis are equal in terms of rights before the law, resources, including health and education. And it's something I genuinely, I don't have an opinion because I don't know, but I'd be very interested in hearing your opinion.
Well, first of all, it's a very good thing that you ask questions and don't necessarily have answers. I'm always bothered when I meet people who believe that they have all the answers and don't ask the questions. So that's a good Jewish tradition, to ask questions. This is what we always do. When it comes to your question itself, the answer is very complex. It's not black and white or yes and no. In principle, the Arabs in Israel have a full equality, in principle. Okay, we have in Israel, we have a developed democracy, and the Arabs in Israel have full democratic rights. We have 4 Arab political parties who now have gone together into one bloc. But Israel is one of the few countries in the world where you have an Arab nationalistic party, which is not Zionist, it's anti-Zionist. You have an Arab socialist communist party. You have an Arab Islamic party, and they're all represented in the Knesset. By the way, the Knesset is one of the most pluralistic institutions in the world. I don't think you have many institutions like that. You have capitalists in the Knesset who would make Margaret Thatcher look like a left-wing social worker, and you have pure red communists, which you hardly have in any parliament today in the Western world. And we have immigrants from all over the world, from former Soviet Union, from Ethiopia, from all over the world. You have ultra-Orthodox and ultra-secular Jews, and then the whole spectrum in between. But back to your question, in principle, according to the law, and there are also all kinds of protections in the law, which give Arabs full equality according to the law. However, there is a certain gap, as there is in many countries, between what is the law and how it's practiced. And there was a commission put down, it's called the Or Commission, which was put down by the government. In the year 2000, after 13 Arabs were killed in riots here in the beginning of the Second Intifada. And the Or Commission, which was a public governmental commission put down by the government, which I was a cabinet minister in, which clearly said that there are institutional discriminations. One thing is how people behave towards each other, but there are institutional discriminations in Israeli practice. And I can give you a whole series of institutional discriminations which are towards the Arab Israelis today and which need to be fixed. And there is a lot of intention to fix the institutional discriminations, but they exist today. And part of it is, of course, as a result of the conflict we have with the Palestinians and the Arab world. And part of it is because we're not doing a good enough job. I mean, we're doing a far better job than what is done in many other countries, but that's not good enough. Now that again, I don't want to compare us to other countries because that's not an excuse for not doing a good enough job. I don't believe that we should have any institutional discriminations, but there are, very much so. So in principle, the answer is that there is no discrimination, but in practice, there is.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And Georgie, last question because we don't want to infringe upon the rabbi's time too much. And Georgie is speaking from Abu Dhabi. So, yeah, the man of the week, the man of the hour. Go ahead, Georgie.
Rabbi, my question is, after the Gulf War, that means after Saddam Hussein's reign is over, has there been any effort for a dialogue with Iran, even though geographically it is very far from Israel? but is that in your radar, or you don't need to consider? How do you see Iran into this?
Iran or Iraq? Saddam Hussein was the leader of Iraq.
No. After Saddam Hussein, was there any effort to get Iran? Because I know the old history of Shah being dethroned, and then comes the anti-Jewish, the Ayatollah Khomeini and all. So my question is there any effort from direct or indirect approaching the Shiite group or Sunni, sorry, not Sunni, the Iran people as a ethnic group?
Well, I understood Netanel's question because the Saddam Hussein's overthrow had to do with Iraq and not so much with Iran.
Right. But I think the essence of the question is basically, is there a dialogue in that is religious dialogue towards the Shiite Muslims that could affect the relationship with Iran?
Well, okay. Let me say like this. We, in principle, first of all, we're not in a conflict with the Iranian people. We're in conflict with the present Iranian leadership. Okay. Shia is a lot of different things. Okay. Shia is Shia has a lot of different houses and a lot of different groups, and most of the Shia groups are not very pleased with the people who are in control of Iran today, and where some of them are even more secular in Iran. But even those who are religious Shia are not necessarily parts of the group which belong to Khomeini or Khamenei or those who are in power today, who do not have the power just to express themselves. So we do in our religious peace work, we do have contacts, quite extended contacts with Shia groups in Iraq. We're not against having those contacts. Neither are our Sunni friends. I mean, our problem here in Israel, let's say our conflict has been mostly with Sunna, right? Our neighbors are Sunna. All the Palestinians are Sunna. They're not Shia, okay? The neighbors we have here, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Syrians, the Saudis, they're all Sunna. So there are Shia in Lebanon, of course, and most of all problematic is, of course, the Hezbollah, which is today become the arm of Iran in the area, but again of the Iranian regime in the area. So we do not have, although there have been certain feelers, we do not have, we as a group, I'm saying the religious peace track, although we do have contacts, very strong contacts even with the radical in the Sunni Muslim world, all the radicals in the Sunni Muslim world, we do not have the same kind of contacts in the Shia world, mostly because those are not our neighbors. Those are not those who we have the Palestinians are half the population here. When I live in Jerusalem, 40% of the population in Jerusalem are Sunni Muslims, but they're not Shia Muslims. So those are not the people who are my direct neighbors, who we have to live every day with, and who we meet with. But we do have contacts with Shiites, And also, more and more now, I mean, just to give you an example here from these last weeks, we had we raised funds for the victims in Beirut after the terrible tragedy which was there. By the way, if any of you want to support that fundraising, you're welcome to go in to the website called Israel Flying Aid. You're welcome to go in and support this fundraising effort.
Right. I'll put the link for people to be able to get into.
Okay. So we now, after that, what happened there, after we started raising funds, people tried to find out who were behind this. And a lot of Lebanese people reached out to me, although my name doesn't really appear there. I wrote about it in my Facebook, but they found out, and they reached out, and this included a lot of Shiite people. And the truth is, including a lot of people who belong actually to Hezbollah, but they don't want to belong to Hezbollah. Why are they in Hezbollah? Not because ideologically, but because they get money from Hezbollah. They get money. They pay them. So they pay them off. So that's why they belong to Hezbollah, not because they're Shiite. They just want peace. They want good for the future of Lebanon. And as long as the Hezbollah are terrorizing the people there, there's not going to be any good for the people of Lebanon. And so they reached out and they came with different proposals to me and so on. I don't know if we're able to do anything, but Israel has to be careful in this connection. But there are countries who can help Lebanon a lot. We just want to help the victims. We don't want to go into the politics. We're not for sure don't want to go in with the Lebanese government or the Lebanese or the Hezbollah. We have people on the ground in Beirut who we know will give the funds to medicine and food to people who are suffering. But that's why we're doing this. But it's interesting that so many reached out, and it shows me when you ask this question, it shows me just that it really doesn't matter. People can be Shiites, and people can be, and as I said, we're working a lot with Shiites in Iraq who want to build a new Iraq, which is disconnected from the regime in Iran, but the Shiites and Sunnis and Kurds in Iraq who really want something sane for the future of Iraq and don't want to be dependent on the regime in Iran. Now it's a difficult, but these are really leading forces, and many people want to do something on the same kind of thing that we want to do here in the Holy Land. This gives me a lot of reason for optimism for the future. This is the kind of way we can work together in this spirit. And I think the people in Iran, I've met all over the world. I've met people from Iran, and they say we just long back to the days when we had the relations, and we don't hate the people of Israel. We don't hate the Jews. We love the Jews. There was always a tremendous Jewish community in Iran, and until these things happened. We like that the Jewish community is here today, so we're pleased that they're in Israel. But we want to have good relations with the people of Iran, just as we want good relations with the people of all the peoples in the area.
Thank you, Rabbi. We are all inspired, I'm sure, and we are that much more optimistic now, I'm sure. And thank you very much for your time and for your wisdom. And I hope that we can all, be a little bit more oriented towards peace and understand that religion is not the problem, but actually might be an important part of the solution here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. We have something that we do here where we give our hands to our guests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. It was exciting for us.
Rabbi.
Thank
you.
you, all of you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, guys, down the road this week, tomorrow, we're going to have Ido Felsenthal coming back, talking about a little bit the Middle East. This week, we're dealing with and he is also a member of Seeds of Peace, so we will talk about that initiative as well. And Wednesday, we have Yossi Klein Halevi of the Jerusalem Post, who published recently, not that recent, his book, Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor, and we'll talk about his book and his initiatives. And I'm sure you all enjoyed as much as I did tonight. And it's always good to hear from people who are actually involved in things. Almost, Rabbi Melchior has almost a kind of a Forrest Gampian sense of having been all around in the last 30 years of politics, and before politics and after politics. And it was a pleasure. So I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Good night.
Bye.